Every now and then, I get to have my friends and colleagues who are passionate experts in their fields come to the show and share their expertise and their stories. This is the very first such episode for the Lady Parts Doctor podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode with Shelby Renee Giles, founder of WorthyWell Co, as we talk about beginning your journey. Hello and welcome to the Lady Parts Doctor podcast. This week I am very excited because this is the first podcast where I am inviting someone to come into our space, to join in on the conversation, and you don't have to just listen to me sharing my thoughts and views and research with you. So I'm very happy today to welcome Miss Shelby Renee Giles. She is a meditation guide, an energy healer, and a spiritual guide bringing self-devotion. She to the forefront of the wellness industry. She is trained by some of the leading voices in modern wellness. She is intentional about bringing spiritual well-being into new spaces to foster a heightened state of collective well-being across diverse communities. And I think this goes without saying, but we are so in need of this right now for so many reasons. So Shelby, welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm so just inspired by what you're doing. I know we both kind of set out on this, journey to pursue what was calling us. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just am grateful for others who are, doing that work and supporting people in the way that you are. So I'm just honored to be a part of this.
Yay, well, thank you again. I was taking a nap, and then something during my nap was like, you need to text Shelby and ask her if she'll be willing to do a podcast episode with you.
I love this because I'm always talking about following your intuition and it's such a practice. And here we are, here we are.
It really is. And I was sitting here thinking, what do I title this episode? What do I really want it to be about? And Shelby and I actually had a conversation prior to recording this where we briefly we were kind of also catching up, but talking about our journeys. And I was like, I really just want to have a podcast, as Shelby mentioned, as we both have kind of started on or embarked upon these journeys in the last year or so, for us to have a conversation about this and really for it to be kind of organic as possible. And during our conversation, we started talking about things and I was like, wait, no, Shelby, I can't talk to you anymore. I want this to be on the podcast.
Love it. I love it. And I know we're going to just pick up right where we left off. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So can you tell, we did the bio, but what were you doing before you were doing focusing on the healing and focusing on the wellness? What were you doing before then?
Yeah, good question. So before starting WorthyWell, my company, I was actually working with a PR firm based in New York, and I was a vice president there, vice president of issue advocacy, and worked primarily on issues centered on criminal legal system reform, racial justice, and a slew of other just progressive issues. I joined that particular organization during the Trump administration, was also there during, the onset of COVID, was there for almost 3 years. And it was actually really meaningful work. I think in many ways, that experience, which was oftentimes, it was very rewarding. It was also very challenging, as anyone can imagine advocacy work, sending love to everybody, including a lot of my former colleagues who do work around, the reproductive rights space in particular. But yeah, it's really challenging work, but it's really rewarding. And in a way, there's this common thread in even the work that I do now, where I used to always say to my colleagues, in doing this work, working to, basically change the country, change the world, change people's, lived experiences through this work, you have to be inherently hopeful. You have to be an inherently hopeful person, because we wouldn't show up every day, to do what we were doing, which was, again, challenging work,
Mhm.
if you weren't inherently hopeful. And that's something that I really, loved about the work. And it also spoke, I think, very, you know, deeply to something that I value, which is hope, And so that work, not only gave me the opportunity to, feel like I could have, some little impact on, issues that I cared about, but also, working at the level that I did in that work, it gave me the confidence to go out on my own.
Mhm.
I couldn't help but, kind of look around and say, oh, wow, like if I'm doing this, I can certainly, embark on this thing that's been calling me, And
Mhm.
so, that goes to show every experience we have, prepares us for the next thing. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to move on from things, not because it's horrible or it's just this sufferable thing, but to move on because you are seeing what you've created with gratitude, and you can move on and say, all right, I feel prepared to do something else. I feel prepared to do this next thing. And that's pretty much how it felt. That's how it felt when I made that transition. But my body knew that it was time. And so I'm proud of myself for, listening to it. And I'm just grateful for where things are now. So yeah.
I love that you mentioned that. That's a very grounded thing because I think for a lot of us, we're just going to stick it out until we can't take it anymore. And we're just so upset about whatever it is. We're loathing whatever it is. We're like, I just like want to go in and curse everybody out and like leave
Yeah,
and drop the mic.
it's so true.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and
so
be
true.
done.
Mhm.
So when we were talking, we talked, I guess I contacted you pretty much a year after the week where you decided that this was the step. So, what exactly? Because I think
Mhm.
we get, for whatever reason, whatever path that we're on, sometimes we just have blinders and we can get so lost in the day to day and what we're doing, especially when we are doing important work, when we are doing valuable work. It's just so easy to focus on that and then to lose sight of, perhaps what our original purpose or original intention was. And once that happens, it can be very difficult to break out of that and to change and head in a different direction. So, for you, when you came to that decision that you mentioned a year ago, how exactly, your body knew, but like what exactly happened? How did you exactly decide that it was time to do that? And then how did you know what it was your new journey would be, what you were going to do differently?
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good question. So I would say back in 2019, I knew that I wanted to do something different. So shortly after I, you know, enrolled myself into this like political, advocacy journey, through my own role, I quickly realized that it's something that I'd always wanted to do, but
Mhm.
wasn't um it didn't fit me in the way that I thought it would, and what I mean by that is there were certain things that I would do to prepare myself for work every day. One of those is meditating, which I still do very, religiously, but one of the other kind of funny things that I used to do was I had this morning playlist that was like really aggressive.
Okay.
So I had this morning playlist that had like Kendrick Lamar and no Nas, like, but like the aggressives, they're like the aggressive
That's like
song.
my workout mix.
Yeah. And so the playlist would start kind of slow as I'm like
Mhm.
making my way in my commute. And then once I got to my stop in DC on the train, it would kick into like the aggressive, the more aggressive music. And so I would be walking to work, a couple blocks from the train stop, just amping myself
Mhm.
up, because I'm out here about to like go help, defend, certain like Black political leaders. I'm about to, do some work to try to help young people, get released from detention centers, and just very like, monumental tasks alongside, my clients. And I'm not an aggressive person generally.
You?
But
I'm teasing.
I'm generally not an aggressive person. I'm a triple Cancer, y'all. Like I'm very zen. But I thought it was very interesting how I was able to like exercise this very masculine expression, and I mean like energy wise, like energetically
Mhm.
masculine expression of my being alongside my more like natural feminine expression. And so what I realized in 2019 was that, okay, there are aspects of this that are good for me, to experience, to step into, especially in a very like powerful leader way. And there were other aspects of it where I was just like, I know that this is something I'm fitting myself into. There were
Mm.
aspects of it that I knew weren't me, and that there was another way for me to support people on a grand scale, And
Okay.
so it was really in 2019 that I knew that I wanted to do something different. But I stayed with my firm because I also knew that I didn't want to work for anyone else.
Mm.
So that was the other piece. And where I was actually a pretty good company. Like I would describe them as a relatively, socially conscious company, and how they, did their best to, support staff and focus on well-being. And nobody gets it right 100%, but I
Right.
did, see a lot of effort on their part. So I was in a decent place. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like continue doing this work because it's important work, until I figure out what it is I want to do.
Mhm.
And where wellness came in was it was already just inherently a big part of my life. I would say ever since my early 20s. It all started with like making diet changes that impacted like my mood and my skin and things like that. And then I got on this path of, oh wow, I like fixed this thing, or like I improved this experience just by like changing the way I eat. And that
Mhm.
just ignited my curiosity, and um just led me to meditation, led me to, just other modalities, energy healing over the years. Um and so I would say in 2020, so yes, going into the pandemic,
Mhm.
it definitely, I think, gave us all a lot of opportunity to reflect and reassess where we were. And I certainly had that opportunity. Doing the work I was doing during the pandemic, during the Trump administration, was incredibly hard.
Mhm.
Trying to do that work in a way that was uh, as supportive as possible to my staff and the people who worked with me. It was really challenging. It made me question, you know can I do this? Can we do this work, in a way that is that centers well-being over profit, you know?
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
because of the work we were doing, our founders, like, they weren't doing this work for profit, it's inherently a business though, and so the way PR firms operate, it's to make a profit, it's a
Right.
business, you know. And so there were just things that I started to question, about my role, my participation in, you know, staff well-being and what's possible, the opportunity to do things differently. And it just became clear, it didn't all stem from work, but it was heavily influenced by work. It just became clear that I was meant to do something different that centered on how to bring people back to themselves, bring people back to um, how to, self-advocate for their own well-being,
Mhm.
and trying to come up with solutions, as a company. It was also very clear that, like, everybody has different needs, and we need to be tapped into those needs. And we also need to know that we're worthy of what we need, of receiving what we need, once we know what that is. And so I think, in doing the work, that I was doing, it became very clear that, wellness was not just something that was a big part of my life. It was something that I needed to actually lean into.
Mhm.
And the company that I founded, WorthyWell, it actually centers on spiritual well-being, because in my own, personal journey, through meditation and getting different certifications and energy healing, breath work, all these different things, it just became clear to me that it's much more than, doing the thing. It's also about who you're being, what you believe in, what you believe is possible, and that goes really that says a lot about how you even approach your well-being. You can meditate every day, you can do yoga, but if you don't check in with yourself around what you believe, you know um if you don't know that everything is possible, then you'll go back, doing the same things that you do every day and use those modalities as band-aids rather than completely letting it be, like, inherently a part of your being. And so
I
I just
love that. I'm gonna like stop you for a moment because I think that resonated with me, and for everyone who's listening, I just like want to have you say that again. But basically, what she said was, it also depends on what you believe is possible. And I think that so many of us, you might have that thing that you really want to do, or God speaks to you and tells you you should be doing, or the universe speaks to you, whoever is speaking to you, and you don't act upon it, you don't do it because really ultimately you don't think that it is possible, you don't think anything's going to come from it, you don't think you can be successful doing it. And I will interject in uh my own journey, that I knew that I should have been doing something with speaking. I've always loved speaking and looked for opportunities to do that. And I love health education. And before I even went to medical school, God put it on my heart that you need to be speaking, you need to be sharing this information. And then I said, because I don't know why, but this is the kind of person I am. I'm like, well, I'm going to go to medical school and I'm going to become a doctor first so that when I speak, I am an expert on whatever that topic is. And then I went to medical school and then I went to residency. And then instead of making good on that thing that I said I was going to do, I don't think I really thought it was possible. And I said, I'm going to focus on what everyone here in this earthly realm, what we believe the next step is, I'm going to go to residency, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to practice. And that's what I did. And for 6 years, I loved the majority of it. I loved the patient interactions, but what I loved the most was the one-on-one conversations that I was having with my patients, doing the education and the thing that was put on my heart as what I was supposed to do. And like you during the pandemic, I think like a lot of us, I consider, sorry, I got a little message from the app about our conversation. It's like giving me a cutoff for time in about 10 minutes or so. But anyway, I was hesitant to go off and start my journey of, starting the podcast, starting the health education website, because I just didn't believe it was possible. And I think when I left, even, I don't know that I believed it was possible so much as I was like, I cannot continue to do what I'm doing the way I'm doing it. Okay, that was my interjection. Please continue.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, it feels like we're just on this new trajectory where I think, this maybe our generation, I don't even know like where I would even timestamp it, but our generation and on, we're needing to decondition a little bit. We're needing to decondition, what we've seen, what we've learned possible, and just be in this space of, oh wow, like it's it's so vast, like, and I see everywhere I turn, I see people like coming into this, realization, and it's a beautiful thing. And when one of us, embraces it and inspires someone else too. And I think that's the beautiful thing about just being this interconnected, human race of
Mhm.
just knowing that your journey is important for so many different reasons. Like for, you, for example, you're probably inspiring people to, pursue their passion, pursue what lights them up, but you're also doing work that is incredibly like, transformative for women, and that is, something that, I guess what I'm trying to say is us doing what we're called to do isn't just about us,
Right.
you know. And so when we listen to that call, it's also God saying, oh, this is how you are meant to serve, and
Right.
and we kind of remember why we're here.
Yeah. I mean, I want to know how you feel about it, because people ask me, they're like, oh, how's it going? How's the podcast? How's this? And I'm like, look, 2022 for me has been my year of faith. It has been my year of step blindly into
Yep.
it. Just do what you're called to do. You don't know where this is coming from. You don't know where that is coming from, but focus on doing what you were called to do to the best of your ability. And I find it like really scary. It's
Yeah, it's totally
invigorating, but
scary.
how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel the same way. There's so much one I guess thing that I don't know if I would call it a mantra or what, but one thing that I say to myself often, usually after meditation, is, I'm only responsible for taking the next divinely aligned step that presents itself. I tend to say that whenever I find myself, feeling a little anxious about, what's ahead, and in a way, it's such a gift to only need to focus on the next step, that presents itself. And I don't mean that in a radical way, like, oh, I don't need to know what's for dinner until until dinner time. I don't mean that. I mean the big things that we are trusting and moving towards, so yeah, I there's so much faith involved in this,
Mhm.
you know, and someone actually said in an Instagram post recently, about this, that I thought was really inspiring. His name's Mike Gazzo. I actually just interviewed him, he and his partner, for my podcast that'll come out tomorrow, actually. But one thing he said was, he actually posed it as a question: does faith beget miracles, or do miracles beget faith?
Hmm.
And he was saying, he had this realization that faith begets miracles. It's not that you wait for miracles to decide whether or not you're going to have faith. And that's exactly what it is. But there's a lot of expanding your capacity to be with the unknown is a huge aspect of it. And
It's
for
not
me,
comfortable.
yeah, it's very uncomfortable. One thing that, again, and I always, talk so much about meditation, but meditation, that practice, for me, has been huge, and just expanding my capacity to feel just like divinely connected, remembering that I'm supported, um, and getting quiet so that I can hear the wisdom come through, hear the intuition come through.
That's the hard
Um,
part. Yeah.
yeah, it's a hard part, and then listening to it too, because sometimes it may not make sense to you in the moment.
Hmm.
But the more you practice listening to it and seeing how things, pan out,
Hmm.
the more you feel comfortable doing that. And so, I mean, huge, 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 faith um thing to do, like a huge activity of faith. So
Yeah, it is. And I think because our time is dwindling down, and I want to make sure that we plug all of you and everything that you have going on. But I did want to ask you, since we've kind of talked about that, and for anybody who is contemplating a journey and needs to take the next step, as you kind of mentioned, meditation and just
mhm.
being open to receiving your message so you can follow through on it.
Yeah.
How do you recommend people meditate? Or, like, for someone who's never meditated, what would you tell them to do?
Oh, that's such a good question. So my meditation practice started a few years ago with just like 10 minutes on, I think I started using Headspace, actually, 10 minutes on Headspace, um,
Mhm.
just using between Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer. Then I decided to take a meditation certification course with the Chopra program,
Okay.
called Primordial Sound Meditation. So the meditation I practice now is mantra based. And so you receive a mantra and you silently repeat that mantra as you're meditating, and it helps you go deeper into the meditation. What I would recommend for a new meditator is to start small. Start small and give yourself grace, and set an intention for why you want to start this practice. Because I think having an intention to come back to when you're like, oh, I don't feel like meditating today, it makes a big difference. So I would say start small, start with 5 minutes a day. Then after a month, maybe go up to 10 minutes. And after a month, go up to 20 minutes. I definitely increased mine incrementally like that, and that's what's helped me to grow my practice. I now meditate in the morning and in the evening, and combine roughly 40 minutes to an hour a day, and that helps me feel supported. So yeah, I would say just start small. And if the apps are helpful for you, certainly use the apps. There are also beautiful YouTube videos, if you're more of a visual person and like the visual and audio. But there's so many resources out there. The biggest piece of it, I think, is setting the intention for why you're starting the practice, and coming back to that each time you do practice. Because yeah, just doing it sometimes isn't enough. We need that why that we can come back to on days when we're just like, am I going to do this today? Because we all have those days. So
Oh, we do. I feel like that's me at least once, at least once a day, every day. Well, I want to again thank you for coming and having this conversation. So, if people want to get more information about WorthyWell, about healing, how can they find you?
yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's Shelby Renee Giles on Instagram. You can also follow WorthyWell at WorthyWell Co on Instagram. And you can visit us online at worthywell.co. And we'll actually be launching our full website very soon. I'm very excited about that. And along with that, some, really beautiful things to support folks during this time that focus on, self devotion, of course, but self orientation